can we not see things we do in our day to day as having that level of calling? It's all in how you look at it. Mindset and what you invest it with changes how you see it. Your perspective changes everything.
Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. This is Jason. I'm Rachel. We are very happy to be with you today. Today,
Mhm.
we have decided that we are going to discuss duty. Okay, I was waiting to see if he was going to giggle.
No, I,
Got your game
I,
face on.
oh yeah, turn
um,
purple. Yeah.
so, the evolution of the thought process of this was interesting because I was reading a book. And that's probably just like, duh, that has been watching at least for a few episodes now is like, of course you're reading a book, Rachel. That's all you ever do.
It's not all she ever
I
does.
do it. You're
Of
right.
course,
It's
this is
just,
the in
in
between.
between
Yeah, yeah.
all the duties of my day,
Mm.
right?
Talk about the familial duties, the duties to your children and to family.
I was reading a book and was thinking about what we wanted to talk about next. And decided that the book that I was reading was very, very strong on a sense of duty. And just started thinking about what that actually means and what it it comes up a lot in a lot of books, and it usually does. Sometimes it's very clear cut. People know exactly what they're supposed to do, what they've been called to. And then other times it's not so clear. People are struggling between a couple of different things that are calling them. They don't know really where their duty lies. And then you have people that just absolutely don't want to have anything to do with having to be obligated to do anything with a duty. And I thought, you know what, this could be interesting. So we're going to get into that. The thing is that as I enjoyed the book, it's part of a series, and I may go into that series a little bit later. But the more that I got to thinking about duty, the more that I felt kind of obligated to talk about a book that has influenced my whole life because it was one that I picked up in childhood and read. And it really it changed my life. And that book, so well known, you all know it. It's Little Women. And this is my youngest daughter's copy of Little Women. She's got this beautiful copy, but this is just such a classic. And it is a classic for a reason. And I think for those that only watch the movies, you just don't get the depth and the richness that there is specifically around the whole concept of duty and of understanding what it is to have an obligation to people, to have a duty, and to be able to find happiness in that. And to me, as I was thinking when I talked to you about this, I said that it is the key to happiness, I think, in life, is understanding what duty is, what your duty specifically is. And when you can not just resign yourself to it, but actually find the joy in it, then that is the key to being happy in life, I think. With Little Women, you start off the book with, the mother coming in, it's Christmas,
Mm.
they give their breakfast to a family of poor children, and that are the mother's sick, and then you see just time after time, you've got Joe, who spends her days watching her aunt march, and she hates it. She absolutely cannot stand it. You see that contrasted with Amy, who takes over later on, who actually enjoys taking care of Aunt March. And her reward is she's taken to to Paris, to France, when they get to go. And Joe, absolutely, it's devastating to her that she spent all of these years watching, caring for Aunt March. And then when it was time to go to Paris, she doesn't get taken. Amy does, her little sister. And yet she kind of goes, when she questions about it, she finds out that it was because Amy performed her duty with joy. She took pleasure in it. And what she was going to get from going to France was more than what Joe would have. And the attitude made a difference to her Aunt March, even though, they both were doing what they were supposed to do. The way that she did it made a difference in the reward that was given. And even though maybe it's not fair, but ultimately it kind of was fair, because how you do what you do matters. So that was kind of where I went with the book. And I'm sure that there's lots more books. Oh, pretty much every book is going to have and talk about it from some angle or another. You are biting your tongue so hard right now. Go ahead.
One example, and I can't give you the whole plot, even though I'd love to, is a film that's been remade maybe a couple times, or it's a play that's been remade as a film a couple times. It's called A Man for All Seasons, and I've heard of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really, there's so much that passes through, and I looked up about duty, and I went, oh okay, duty to one's country and one's king or one or God, and it kind of and to oneself, and that kind of it's just one of the said it was really good. It won some Academy Awards, so I gave it a shot, and I think it's a what the kids call low key. It's a low key favorite of mine, and it's partially due to the acting in it, but it's also what would I do in that situation? How do you deal with you have a king who is so bent on doing what he wants to do. And when the church in Rome doesn't agree with that, he goes, I'm splitting off on my own. So the main character, Sir Thomas More, he has a duty to the church. And this split off thing, it's I have a duty to my king as well. So I'm gonna not say what I truly think about this marriage. And everyone else is saying, well, we're signing this document saying that we approve or whatever, and you need to come along with us and do it. And he doesn't. And he does, spoiler, he does it to the death. He is murdered for that. And he was probably the king's best subject because his duty was so to the king that he would not even oppose him, even though in his heart he's steadfast to the church and steadfast to his own morals. The key is that he is true to himself. And would I just sign the piece of paper so I could have more time with my wife and my daughter? Would I be able to sleep at night knowing that I was not true to myself and true to who I am? And it's a quandary. It
That's
really
what
is.
Usually when people say that somebody is an honorable man, that's what they mean, right? Is they mean that they are someone that knows their duty and does it. So there's being true to yourself, there's being honorable, there's the sense of faithfulness that
Fidelity, yes.
right
That's
that
another thing that people talk about when talk about duty. It's fidelity. They
mhm,
say, "Oh, I have a duty to my marriage," and we've got to stop, thinking of duty as a bad thing. Like, oh well, something that you just kind of it has to be a high. There's so many people that see as a higher
that's an
calling,
interesting point, isn't it? That a lot of times duty is seen as a negative rather
burden
than
with that.
right.
Yeah,
It's seen as a burden, it's seen as a negative thing. Whereas and I think that's something that's shifted. I think that in the older books that I read, this when you talk about somebody having a duty, it's never seen as a negative.
no, it's
In those
actually
books,
it's a positive,
probably
net
like
positive.
before the 1950s, anything written previous to that, duty is seen as absolutely a positive thing. And then somehow we lost that and it became
Oh, and this
something
in
that
the the samurai movies that I watch, where it's like there's such a sense of honor that they would take their own life rather than.
mm,
So it's that
but it's
that's
not even
we've
those
lost that.
big
People don't do that anymore.
concepts.
Yeah,
I mean, if you go to the day-to-day things that we do now, the things that are duties are the simple things a lot of times. Getting up, caring for your kids, giving them breakfast, lunch, dinner, washing the dishes, the laundry, going to work every day, filling the gas tank, and just you could look at your daily chores as your duties. Those are your responsibilities, your
chore gets a
obligations.
bad rap too. I think it's all in how you characterize it. There's duty, responsibility,
It
chore, and
mm, it
chore
doesn't
seems like
have to
something.
be a
Yeah,
big thing,
yeah,
though.
okay.
It can just be your daily obligations that are your duty to fulfill. That if you don't do them, then your life is not going to be as quality of a life. Those are the things that up the pleasantness of your day to day. If you come home and you've got a dish full of dishes from the night before, your quality of life is affected because you didn't do your duty.
Yeah, and it also connect, like you said, honor, loyalty, all those things can. I mean, we need to do our responsibilities, but I think those stories where it elevates it
Yeah.
to a higher to a
Because it's
higher moral
also the
level is you get
things
loyalty involved and
it's also the
honor.
things like, the things we think about as duty is, the soldiers, the police officers, the doctors and nurses, those that have a responsibility of care that's life giving or life saving.
People are dependent on you. That
Right.
if I don't, then X happens, and you don't want to see that.
And I think that's an interesting that is interesting to me too, in that every we tend to look for a calling and we kind of glamorize it a little bit. It's like if I have this big honorable thing that people are going to look at me and they're going to recognize what a big thing I'm doing, right? When you're a doctor or you're a soldier or a police officer, you have the recognition,
Or a pastor.
right? Yeah. But I think that even those people in the day to day, it becomes mundane performing those
It
duties.
can if you let it.
It can lose the glamour that it had at first when, you realize, oh, yeah, people think that this is such a glorious job, but, in actuality, I'm like sitting here filling out paperwork or it doesn't feel like it's as big. And yet, it does come down to attitude and how you think about those things. Is if you can do the small things, the everyday things, the for moms, it's the changing the diapers, the picking up, the sweeping up the food that's fallen on the floor. That is such a huge part of my life. The food, sweeping the floor. But if you can look at that as everything that I'm doing, every act of service that I'm performing is a way that I am showing my love. It's not just a simple thing. It's it's a service, and it's a way of me pouring out my heart to those that I love. Then it completely changes it from just this chore, this thing that I have to do, to something of beauty that I'm doing. And in the Bible, those are the things that are the storing up treasures in heaven. It's the acts of service that we do day to day. It's the things that we're obligated to do because we have a burden of care. Just, it's your responsibility. Nobody else, you're getting paid for it. You're not getting paid for it, whatever.
Doing what's right. It's
Yeah.
with doing for one thing that came up recently at church is our pastor was talking about, oh, a calling, this thing about calling. And he said, everybody's worried, oh, I don't have a calling order. He goes, are you saved? And I was just thinking, did God call you? Did you pick up the phone? So when there is a reach out that it says because he first loved us, because he first. So the thing is, he reaches out first, and you reach back. There you go. There's your calling. You just got called. So it's just what's the label on that calling. So I think when someone says I have a calling, it lends it this mystical higher purpose. And the thing is, we we tend to put certain, like you mentioned before, like soldiers have different people, and doctors and things like, they have this higher calling. And can we not see things we do in our day to day as having that level of calling? It's all in how you look at it, mindset, and what you invest it with changes how you see it. Your perspective changes everything with what you do in your day to day. And I'm just as guilty as the next person of kind of going, oh, here we go, and I miss out. I miss out on that something I could get from it deeper, and I think that that's a conviction I'm getting now about that.
Sorry, I'm laughing because our son is upstairs
Yeah.
singing in his room, and it's the cutest thing ever. uh, what do you do though when, yeah, I mean, all the things that we've kind of talked about, the day to day task, it's pretty obvious that that is our duty, right? What do you do though when you aren't sure what your duty is? When you're torn between things? And that I think is one of the things that comes up again and again in a lot of fiction books
Yeah.
is somebody not being sure where their duty lies. And you do have the ones, the rare occasions where you have your main character that just doesn't want to do, they don't want to be saddled with responsibility. And then, the character arc might be them becoming okay with, or, resigning themselves to having responsibilities and that kind of stuff. But I, I don't know. I can't think of a single one of those stories that I actually like, where somebody just didn't want to be bothered with anything. I mean, does Hobbit?
I just thought he's like he just wants to have peaceful life, and here these dwarves come in, and Gandalf comes in, and they're just like, yeah, he's
Yeah.
going to be part of our group, and he's like, no, I'm not, and then
But it's
goes on an
funny
adventure.
because I don't know that he didn't want a responsibility. It's that he thought that there was no way that what was being asked of him was something that he could possibly do. So,
Somebody saw something in him that he didn't see in himself, and he just was like,
yeah, that is a really cool thing though that Tolkien did. Is he's going, you've got a character, a wizard, a wise person that's going, yeah, you don't even know what you're capable of here, but pretty sure that you're the type of person that once you get hooked into it, your character is enough to make you go through until the end. Because Gandalf is not even in that story for a good chunk of it. Like, he leaves.
but yeah, and some people are like, why'd you do that? He can get you can get very dependent if a character has some extra ability or knowledge or something like that. You can get really dependent upon them, and I think that in a way, Tolkien wanted his characters to struggle and shine on their own merit
It's a
in a
way
way.
for
So
Bilbo to get to know to get to know the dwarves, to get to know their desires and their wants enough that he became invested in them and in their task and what they were trying to do. That it wasn't just about, because he had to see that what they were looking for was worthwhile. Because as long as he just saw them as being greedy or wanting gold, that's not something worth actually putting his life on the line for. But when he saw that what they wanted, and they really did a good job, I think, in the movie on this one, of showing that what they wanted was what he really wanted. That was one thing I appreciated about the movie. It kind of did expand on the book in that. That's rare for me to say,
you've
but I
said that, yeah. I
appreciate
remember you
I
saying.
appreciate the movie,
Didn't he say
what they do here.
Didn't he say that in the Baggins line that not to that there was no really adventures. He mentioned there was an old was it an old Took or some bull roar Took, or was that in thing? They were talking about like a hobbit back in his past that had done something crazy
Mhm,
adventures, and everybody looked at him like he was a loony, and it's just, oh, that's just not something even my family does. So
mhm.
it seemed like, but the thing is, we've got two famous Baggins that we know of that had the most ultimate adventure that could ever be. So don't let your family, here's a little lesson.
Well,
Don't let your, what, don't, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you always gotten.
the other hobbits in the Shire, I thought he had too much took in him. Or was that Frodo? That was
That was
Frodo.
Frodo.
Yeah, Bilbo, he really did value home and the comforts of home. And when he saw that what the dwarves wanted was a home,
Hmm.
that they needed, so that all that he was longing for was what they were wanting. It wasn't about the wealth and the gold. I mean, they're dwarves, so it is a little bit, but that they were looking for their home. Then that was when he was all in. Was when he went, you know what? Okay, I get it now. I get what you're trying to do. And at that point, he was willing to go, you know what? I may not be enough. I may not be able to do what you're asking me to do, but I'll give it as much as I can. And until that point, he wasn't really fully invested in their journey. He was along, and he took that step and ran out the door without his handkerchief, but he wasn't really thinking that he could contribute anything.
It's called the buy-in. Whenever you have a poker game, you have to ante up. You have to buy in. You don't just come over there and go, I'm just going to play the game. You've got to put some skin in the game, as they say. You've got to put something down, a deposit. You have to have something to lose. And when you do that, that's when they say you're all in. That's when they say that you're invested in it. It's if you come into something and you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, it to me it doesn't put that onus on you to really go all out. You're kind of like, well, I can pull the ripcord at any time and leave, and none be the wiser. But I think that yeah, that's when you have something that to invest,
Mhm.
and that's what I like about that story.
And then the other side of that. So we talked about somebody not really wanting responsibility and then figuring out that, oh, they do. Not out of a lack of honor, a lack of character, but just not seeing the big picture, I think, with Bilbo.
Yeah.
But then what about the not knowing what is your true duty?
Well, Sir Thomas More in A Man for All Seasons had a conflict of duty. So he knew what each one of those things were, but they came at loggerheads because his duty to the church and duty to the king
Mhm.
at conflict. So which one how do you do both? And honestly, his duty was to the church, and it really was. But you're also the king's subject. So basically, he basically through his own silence was like, your silence is, and he of course he's a lawyer, so he was using law terms. He was saying, he said, well, your silence is admission of guilt, and he goes, no, no, no. In this term or this, he starts giving these law precedents that, and
Mhm.
they just get so upset that finally they're just so he's in the right. He's in the right, and you feel it through the entire movie, the entire play, and but you see his conflict and you see that there's nothing he can do.
Mhm.
You're doing the right thing and you're still going to go down for it. And that to me, I'm thinking about the martyrs, those who have died because of their duty to the truth, their duty to Christ and the truth of Christ, and willing to go through and suffer horrible things and never be derelict in their duty to be to the end. And I think these are also not all people that serve their duty or their responsibility are heroes. I mean, we can maybe, but I'd say definitely it does have a correlation. We talked about the hero, I think in our first second episode. I would say that they know their duty and their responsibility. They serve it implicitly, but anybody can have a sense of duty and not be a hero. But I think you can't be a hero without a sense of.
I
I
think
think it goes hand in hand.
conflict of duty, though, is one of those that I think that it's really relatable to most of us because we all can feel conflicted over all of the different things that we're trying to juggle. I mean, you get up and you go to work and you're going, my duty right now is to the people here. But then, if I call you and I'm like, hey,
Right. Am I going to say, no, I'm sorry? It to be honest, if I really
you
talked to
can
my
know your
my
duty and
supervisors, they're
not
going to
have
say
time.
they're going to tell me your family comes first. We'll figure this job thing out. And not all jobs are like that. They're like, if they make you choose between your family and the job, I
But there can be times though
rethink it.
when
Rethink
the
it.
job is not asking you to do that, but you also know that you should be there, that there's nobody else taking care of that. You face that this week
Yeah.
at your work, going, we had you ask off so that I could have used the car to take our son to a doctor's appointment. And you're sitting there going, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And yet at the same time, I know that there are people that I am supposed to help that nobody else is going to help, that are falling by the wayside. And
But in the end, it's more my sense of duty. It's not something that was
mhm,
placed upon me. It's just something that I feel
right.
because when I went back to work, I found out that situation, it'll be there when I get there.
Mhm.
And and I'm not putting it by the wayside for months. It was just one day. It'll be all right, you know. And I think that the pressure that I'm feeling is partially at my employment, but a lot of it is me. It's internal. It's my own, not a perfectionism, but I have a sense of quality. You know, a sense of doing my best.
But I think that everybody faces that a lot. It's just such a commonplace thing of going, I have two things that I need to do right now, and I'm torn between them. Usually, we can pick which one is the most important, but there are some times when it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm going to save this person or I'm going to save this person. And how do I choose?
Or another thing that comes up a lot in real life, but also in the fictional in movies that we watch and things like that. I've seen films where, and we've seen real life situations where a an officer in the army is given an order, and that order conflicts with their internal morality. I'll mention one really quick. I believe it's let's see, what is it called? So it's a film based upon a true story, and it is about a soldier who, as part of his religion, yeah, Hacksaw Ridge. Sorry, it's called Hacksaw Ridge, and it's about a soldier whose dedication to he has a moral issue with guns. He's in which is interesting. Exactly, that's the exact thing that everybody was like, "Why are you in the army?" He's
Mm,
there as a medical officer, and this movie I've seen it a couple times and went, "I'm not going to cry," and then I do. I'm such a sap for that. But it's when somebody has this dedication to go, you know what? People have these weapons and they're taking lives. I'm going to save some, and he ends up saving his whole platoon without a weapon on him. In fact, there's a situation where they all have to do these maneuvers in boot camp and have guns and do flip. He said, and they gave him a wooden one. He's like, I don't even. It looks too much like a weapon, like I'm holding it. I know it's a little far, but his dedication to not doing that
mm.
is he's like nothing on you guys. This is my own personal. It's a thing that religiously, and he's true to himself to the end and saves lives. There are people that are still we're still walking around because of the decisions he made. So again, that's when you're
It
internal.
came up in Fiddler on the Roof. I took
Oh,
our kids
wow, it's
to
amazing how this stuff
see,
happens.
yeah, I took our kids to see Fiddler on the Roof yesterday. And when they are telling the Jews that they have to leave, the Russian soldiers, the commander is there. I'm sorry, I don't want this, because Tevye is very upset that he could actually carry out this order. And he's like, I don't want this, but this is my duty. This is what I have to do. And then, so you're seeing this man who's conflicted over his duty and what he knows is right. And then you
And his
see,
orders, yeah.
right. And then you see the third daughter, Hava's husband, is also a Russian, right? She marries one of them, and they come in at the end and say, we're leaving too. And her husband says, we can't stay here with people that would do something so wrong. So we're going to choose to leave as well. So he's like abandoning his position and going to start a new life. And yeah,
Did he was it dishonorable discharge or because you're basically you're they call it dereliction of duty. You're basically your orders were and you can be dishonorably discharged for that,
I
and
don't
it's
know
something
at
that
that
hangs
point.
on you
And you're talking
forever.
about early 1900s in Russia. I don't know whether that would have been, I don't know the circumstances
You have to
around
run
how
really
he
far
left.
to not have that hang over your head,
Yeah. But
deserved or not.
it really did, I mean, just heart-wrenching how you have these 2 men who both are sitting here going, "I'm being asked to do something that I don't want to do. What am I going to do?" One of them is going, "I'm going to just carry out my duties because I don't have a choice." And the other one went, "Well, I do have a choice. I cannot be a part of this."
Reminds me of Rolf in Sound of Music. He loved her, you think,
But he
but his
chose,
loyalty to the yeah.
yeah. Uh, it just, it's time after time after time. I think that that's another element that I hadn't really thought about before is when you choose your duty wrong, just how much that can torture you. And that's something that those men in that situation, the commander there in Fiddler on the Roof, that he's going to have that on his conscience the rest of his life. That he followed his commands out of a sense of duty, thinking it was the right choice. And yet, how many times is that going to haunt him? Going, it wasn't. When you violate your own conscience to do something that's expected of you.
You have to live with that. And to be honest, when it comes to in real life, that's heartbreaking. In the world of, just like we talked about in the episode about tragedy, that fiction can help us deal with those situations. So to be honest, that kind of conflict, I don't see it on a deeper scale like that. I don't see it, like you said, all the time, but I see that in fiction, and in a way it helps me grapple with those bigger things. So like with A Man for All Seasons, I'm like, what does it mean, government, church? I've never had to make that choice, praise God. But what if I did? What would I make the same choices as him? In Hacksaw Ridge, would I make the same choices as he did? To, I mean, I'm not in an army or anything like that, but would I, would I put my faith aside just to go along to get along? Exactly, and I find that is something that I'm challenged with every day. And experiencing those things in fiction is, I think, a way for me to think differently about what happens in my life. And for that, I think that I'm grateful for that.
The result, though, is like either you can feel really bad about yourself for the rest of your life, or you can be proud of yourself. And I think that's one of the things that when we follow our sense of duty, when we make the choice about what we need to do, even if it's hard, even if it's mind numbing or grueling just in the repetition, we can know inside ourselves that we're doing the right thing, that we're proud of ourselves. And the sense of accomplishment, the sense of fulfillment that we get from that, I don't think can be equaled. It's one of those that you think of those that we label a hero in real life, the doctors and the firefighters and the police officers, the soldiers. These are the ones that we honor as heroes. And we all we look up to them because of the level of sacrifice that is needed for them to perform those duties. And I think that, we're torn sometimes when we look at those roles. We have the part of us that goes, "Oh, I would really like to be able to do that too. I would like that sense of fulfillment." And then the other half of us goes, "Oh, I'm really thankful that I'm not asked to do that sometimes." And, we can have that kind of split reaction of going, "Well, a part of me would like to be a hero, part of me doesn't want to be a hero." And then we look at the everyday heroes, the ones that the parents, the teachers, the ones that maybe don't get the recognition that they deserve all of the time, that we go, you know what? The daily sacrifices, the small things that they make, for the parent, the getting up in the middle of the night, time after time after time, the constantly being just mentally burnt out because of the load that they carry, and just learning how to pace yourself, how to, perform those daily tasks. And for the teachers, the having to deal with the problem child, the problem student, having to come up with creative solutions for the child who's just not getting it, who can't seem to focus, coming up with those creative workarounds and solutions in a system that doesn't want you to be creative. I mean, just how difficult we make it on our teachers right now with standardized everything. And man, don't you wish that teachers could do the Dead Poet Society thing and just throw the rule book out the window and,
Yeah,
you know,
so often it's teaching to the test rather than teaching these students to think for themselves, and also that they can use their minds, that they do have these abilities within them. Finding that spark and blowing on the coals a little bit, on the get those bellows going, is, to me, it's the harder thing.
mm,
And the easy thing to do is to make a standardized test and have everybody pass that, and have the teachers pay, connected to how well their students did on the test. It creates bad circumstances.
but all of those things, when somebody is able to carry out those duties, when they sacrifice in order to do that, we honor them. And when we look at the big sacrifices and we go, you know what, that's worthy of honor, then I think that we can look at the little sacrifices that we all make day to day, where we're laying aside our wants and our desires. When all I really want to do is just sit down and, I don't know, play a game, read a book. Yeah, read a book. But instead, I'm grocery list planning and dinner and all of the stuff that you do day to day, and be proud of yourself when you're doing those duties and doing them well, that you're living your life, you're fulfilling your expectations of yourself, you make yourself proud. And whether anybody else ever acknowledges that or not, I think that, when we know that we've done what we're supposed to do, we can be happy. We can be proud of ourselves and of who we are and of the life that we're living. And I think that that is a really important part, that just the meaning that that brings to our lives, to know that we have been faithful in the small things as well as the large things. We all need to be proud of who we are, or we're just going to be constantly dissatisfied with
Right.
our lives. I think that when we don't have anything that we're actually doing that's meaningful, that that's the times when we just feel like we're floundering through life, that we're not really contributing anything. I think that we all need to have a purpose, whether it's big or small. And sometimes it may be that we're just not recognizing what we're doing currently. We diminish our purpose because it's not the grandiose thing. It's not the soldier or the doctor or the police officer, Yeah, all of those things somehow, I think, kind of come together to be like, this is the formula for finding purpose in your life, finding meaning. And then comes the joy, then comes the happiness of knowing that you've fulfilled your purpose in life. And yeah, that Remember the purpose-driven life?
Yeah, it was so popular for many years. Yeah.
So popular. But and I think that every child, in a lot of ways, looks for that big thing,
What's my purpose?
"What's
What's
my
the
purpose?
meaning of
What's the
life?
meaning?"
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't recognize or we downplay the things that, sometimes it's just doing whatever you have in your hand to do and being faithful with that. And there's going to be some people that have huge roles to play in this life, but the majority of us, it's going to be small.
You have to find the faithfulness in the small things.
Hmm.
And I know the word says, the one that's faithful in the little will be given much, because everybody always wants the much. They always want the much because it has this this shine on, this glamour on it. And often it, it's not the large things, it's the small things, it's the day to day. And that's where
Mm.
it's at.
It's the little women.
It's the little women.
It's not like this is groundbreaking or new necessarily. All of this has been covered, I'm sure, many times by people far more eloquent than we are. It's been
Yeah,
kind
but
of fun to
they aren't
delve
they aren't
into.
us, and we have our voice that we want to share, just to speak it out into the world,
I think, yeah,
communicate with each other.
my encouragement would be to, myself and you and to anyone who happens to stumble across this here is just be encouraged that what you do day to day, it big or small, it makes a
It
difference.
matters.
It matters when you focus in, when you find what you do and make that your purpose. Yeah, that's there's the joy, there's the happiness. Doing what you're called to do in the
Yeah, don't
small
don't
and the
see it as
big.
a burden. Don't see it as a chore. See it as a higher calling, even in the small things. I think that's what I took. That's what I took from this. So, whenever soldiers, as part of their duty, and they face another soldier, they salute them. So, what I'm going to do is salute all of you out there that are living according to your duty and your calling and your purpose, even without knowing it. So, salute. I salute you. All right. Well, join us next time. We never know what we're going to talk about until maybe shortly before, so that creates that immediacy, which I like. I enjoy that. Keeps me on my toes. So we want to hopefully that you have a great week, and we will see you next time. Goodbye from Weatherford Daze.